research organizations and including universities are more and more challenged to form strategies, right? To make sure that they have an alignment, to make sure that there's a specific area that they're known for, that they invest their resources there, etc. So there's always a tension, right? And we feel that at all the different levels. Also, obviously, with regard to your work, there probably is some sort of tension between you wanting to be autonomous and doing your own research, and maybe the group or the professors saying, well, look, this is what we do in our group. Then we have, second is there's a lot of change obviously going on in academia. And on the other hand, there are sometimes rigid structures, especially in state organizations such as Leibniz and most universities in Germany. So it's a continuous challenge to be able to change while you can't always change the system. Things we most likely would like to change are TVL, right? So the remuneration you receive, for example, or some legal frameworks on contracts, etc., etc. Then we have high levels of uncertainty at all levels, right? If you do innovative research ahead of time, you don't know if it's going to work out or what the outcome is going to be. Otherwise, it's not innovative. And of course, there's high uncertainty at the individual level. You guys know what I speak about, high levels of uncertainty. Will I make it with my PhD? Later on, if you stay in academia, will I make it? Will I get an offer for a professorship at some stage, etc. Then obviously we have high diversity of team members with regard to backgrounds, nationalities, etc., etc. And most interestingly, I think, and this is not true in business, leaders question the leadership role. So challenging in academia, as I said before, leadership challenging at all levels, and more important than ever, because 90% of publications in the natural and engineering sciences are co-authored. So they are produced in teams, and therefore obviously effective leadership, team leadership is more important than ever. Now, what are the roles of leaders? This, I think, is an interesting model, relatively old one, originally introduced by Mintzberg. You see that leadership entails a number of different roles. This is originally from management. We see that there is, yes, the core leader role, and I will speak about that more, but we also have other roles, including liaison, environment monitor, etc., etc. Why am I showing the model? Well, because it's important to see how complex the role is and how complex maybe the daily work of your professors is. In addition to teaching and being an expert in research, obviously, he or she also has to take care of the resources, something that's, I think, increasingly challenging in academia. To environment monitor, meaning know what the latest trends are. Entrepreneur, meaning you have to really instill controlled changes. You have to be the driver of change. You have to make connections as a liaison person. You have to be the spokesperson. And finally, most importantly, obviously, the leader role, which is what we're talking about right now. And a couple of years ago, we did a survey of people like you guys doing their PhDs or postdocs on the different roles and to what degree they see both the ideal leader do it and their real leader, so their professor. And this is a short depiction. And I think what's most interesting is the delta is biggest in the leader role, right? So people were pretty happy with, for example, resource allocation, etc. But the leader role, as you might allude to, was regarded as, well, not sufficiently carried out mostly. So we wanted to explore that further, and I think we're getting to the core of what we speak about right now. We did a survey on what we call bad leadership in research organizations. So we asked people, what do you experience in terms of bad leadership? And I did that in qualitative interviews, got tons of answers, and interestingly enough, then clustering the answers, we found that the number one type of bad leadership mentioned in academia was actually laissez-faire. So not taking on the responsibility, not clarifying expectations, not helping when conflicts occur, etc., etc. And obviously there's a lot of, well, a lot of inefficiency and also a lot of burden on people like you guys. But I think in a sense, the fact that laissez-faire is so often mentioned is to some degree good news, because something can be done about it, okay? And then asking junior academics, so postdocs, PhDs like you guys, why do they show this kind of behavior? Yes, character was mentioned, but interestingly enough, insecurity mentioned as a feature. And the second most stated area was lack of ability, lack of training. I think this is a very important point, because as you know, most professors have never been prepared for their role as a leader. And I think, again, the good news is that something can be done about it. And I will speak about that next. So in short, my belief is that research organizations, be it universities, be it Leibniz, Max Planck, Helmholtz, etc., have to invest much more in actually preparing their leaders, the professors, to become leaders, and also helping the ones who are in those positions be more effective. And I think, again, the good news is that organizations, since maybe the last 5 years, have started investing much more in this area. When I started doing leadership training for professors in 2007, back then at LMU, I always got this question, why do you do it? And most importantly, no one's going to join, right? So can you actually do it? And the good news is yes, we can. There is a lot of interest, and more interest with every year. And I'm working also with Max Planck. I've been invited by Leibniz, etc., etc. So there's a lot of interest. I think, again, this is good news. So at TUM, we have implemented a leadership development program for professors, also for postdocs, which is based on research evidence. So in short, we've done studies showing that good leadership, in this case called transformational leadership, is a significant positive predictor of publication performance 1 and 2 years later. So I think this is an important basis. And based on that, we give workshops, seminars for colleagues. There's an exchange of experiences, and we offer a personal leadership profile, which gives a pretty detailed assessment. It's based on self-rating of different leadership areas and of the rating by PhDs, postdocs, etc. And it identifies specific areas that are likely to be targeted for improvement. And then we help the professors build their own profile, build their own development plan, and move on. And for some colleagues, over years, they come to us for support and for exchange of experience, etc., etc. So in short, I think there is movement. People are taking the topic much more serious than they did 5 years or even 10 years ago. So organizations are investing. I still think they have to invest much more. Now, what the organizations can do, I spoke about, and I want to close with maybe what you can do in your role as PhDs. I think one important step is to clarify expectations. And the questions beforehand, I saw, I think many of you feel that you don't really know what's expected of you in terms of your PhD. I think that's something that can be clarified in a dialogue. Of course, important. I think that the more a professor doesn't give you clear structures, the more you have to demand it and help him or her implement it. For example, by preparing the meetings, by pointing out what the most important questions are that you have, maybe by summarizing what you've agreed upon after the talk, so that it's, that is there, that is on record and usable for the next meeting. I think with regard to information, I hear a lot of the times that PhDs feel that they're not really informed, and I understand that. On the other hand, I guess from the professor's perspective, there are, of course, there's so many things going on and so many people you talk to that you sometimes don't realize that there's this piece of information that you should have given also to this person, to this PhD. So I think a lot of the times it's really about asking and actively demanding. Then trying to find out what type, so what personality type your advisor is, I think is very important. So one person might be more inspired by, visions, by creative ideas, by, crazy endeavors. Others really need more structured proposals or clearly argued based on facts, etc. So we have to find out how he or she works in a sense, in order to be able to better convince them. And finally, and this also goes to the network, is of course important to find allies. So find other people who are similar-minded, be it within your group, be it outside of your group, to exchange with, and maybe to also help jointly convince your advisor to change things. And with that, I wish you the best of luck with your PhD and beyond, and I look forward to your questions later on. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Claudia. That's great. I just realized that previously when we spoke, you said that the last slide would be a nice transition to the Q&A session. So I thought maybe we could revisit your slide at the end of Thomas's talk, just before the Q&A session, and that might be good inspiration for questions, if that's okay with you.
That's good.
Great. Yeah, I really liked your the issue of bad leadership and really trying to get people to create a definition of what it is, because I feel that many people in academia, and myself included, I find it really hard to define what is a good and bad leader, because I haven't myself received any leadership training. I really like that point a lot. And yeah, maybe we could talk about that a bit later, but just as a reminder for people who joined and for latecomers, we have a Q&A function open at the bottom of your screen, so all participants should be able to see that button. And when you click on the button, you have the option to type in a question, and especially considering the topic being quite sensitive, there is the option to post a question anonymously. I think, I'm not sure if participants can see the Q&A right now, but they should see the first